building resilience for crew mobility. And this panel will look at the lessons learned from the last 3 to 4 months. What processes could have been put in place to minimize the impact? What should the industry and the travel providers do to stop such a situation impacting as hard as it did in the future, common in the future? Is greater communication needed? What about support mechanisms for the crew, and what about visas? We were talking a little bit about visas in the last session. Maybe we can, examine that a bit more. And then what about the 20,000 crew stranded in the Middle East Gulf? Get your views on that. Yanis, can I ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and about your views on the current situation?
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm Yannis Pantazopoulos.
If you can move it closer to your mouth, just move the whole thing. That's it, as close as you can. That's it.
Okay, fine. So thank you for having me. I'm Yannis Pantazopoulos. I'm the regional manager for Air France KLM Delta, covering a part of East Med, Greece, Turkey, and Cyprus, out of which the two countries, as you may well aware of, Greece and Cyprus, are very well into shipping business. A bit of a background for me, I studied psychology and I got so crazy to deal with aviation at the very end. So, going back in time, I say, why did I do that? But nevertheless, I'm also excited. I'm also been dealing through this small window of opportunity working for aviation. I had the chance to work extensively with shipping. I was working for British Airways for 11 years, being the global manager for marine and offshore. So I have a tendency to say that I can get some of the anxiety of the people that they have already talking about crew, and just because I don't want to create a monologue here regarding the situation. I've heard a lot from the previous panel, to be very honest, and I couldn't agree more on what is happening. I have to say that us as aviation, we play a significant role into whatever is happening. We take part on their anxiety, not only the seafarers, also the crew departments and the companies that they are trying to make the utmost for the people to bring them back home safely, quick, on time, and likewise to get them the other way around on board the ships. So really glad to be here and given the opportunity and the chance maybe to share some insights from the aviation part.
Okay, thank you, Yanis. And we'll talk a little bit about the views of the airline industry and all of this when we start the questions. Henrik, please, over to you, sir.
Yes, hello, good day and good afternoon. My name is Henrik. I'm coming from Danica Crew Specialist Group. So we are, a middle-sized crew management and crew recruitment company. And we have a network of offices. Actually, we started 16 years ago in Ukraine. But today we have offices in Ukraine. Well, from the beginning we have in Hamburg, we have in Cyprus, Ukraine, Georgia, Turkey, India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So we actually offer a wide net of nationalities. So that's what you have, about 50 ships in crew management, and
Okay.
about 2,000 crew as a crew agency on board.
Well, what is the nationality split of the crew?
It's still there's still a lot of East Europeans actually, because we started there a long time ago. But Indonesian pool. And I should mention also, actually, we have a cadet program in Kenya, but Indonesian crew pool and Filipino crew pool is, of course, growing.
Okay, thank you, Henrik. Thank you. Captain Nikos?
Good evening from my end also. Thank you for having me here. I would like to say something about my background. My origin is officer of the Hellenic Navy, 12 years sea service on board various type of vessels, like oilers, frigates, etc., as a captain of a vessel. And the last 13 years I'm working for the TMS group. The first 7 years I was responsible for the establishment of the training center with simulators, etc. And the last 6 years I'm the crew management of TMS Cardiff Gas, the LNG sector of the group. And as all the shipping companies, we're facing a lot of challenges these years. As we discussed previously, from the COVID especially, the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, and now we have, apart from the Houthis, and Red Sea, we have also the Strait of Hormuz issues. So we are here to discuss more.
And I think this is what's going to be very important about this Posidonia this week, that we're going to be learning a lot of things, getting people's views on a whole range of issues facing shipping at the moment. Janis, I did promise you I was going to just get a viewpoint initially from the airlines on the role that they're playing in all of this, because you can't move crew without aircraft. So how important do you still regard the crew travel sector, and how has it maybe been altered or more demands placed on you because of the situation? Can you maybe give us your perspective and move that microphone nice and close? Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Before I go to the COVID era, let me say that especially for the what we call the legacy carriers, and France KLM brags to be one of those, so a legacy carrier because it's been around for ages and covers an extensive network. We've been dealing with marine and offshore business for a great number of years, decades, close to our existence. Just noteworthy to say that we are a group that we are around 100 years. So we've been dealing with marine and offshore for many years ago. Now, so it is to a great importance. When COVID came, everybody realized that there was something going on. If you all recall, aviation and general speaking, nobody was traveling. Yeah? Planes were stranded, crews were stranded, nobody was traveling. But magically, they all also realized within the aviation community that there was a small segment of people that they needed to travel. They needed to carry on those goods that Christos mentioned. This almost 90% of the goods that we consume, they needed to bring in our houses. Remember, during COVID, we were staying in our houses, trying to order whatever we needed to order, but we never thought that someone needs to ship this from A to B. So that made it even more significant for the airlines to understand that during all calamities, and COVID was just an example. Think about the Iraqi war, think about SARS, think about all these bad things that has happened in the planet. There was one single segment that kept on going, and that was only the seafarers. So for me personally, but I think I'm speaking on behalf of my group as well, we highly respect this segment. We focus and we want to do the utmost to support the needs of the crew departments, because this is what it is at the end of the day, and make sure that the people, like I said earlier on, they need to be safely and on time on the ship, and likewise they need to be safely back on home. So it's to a great importance, and I have to make this very clear, especially not only for my group, but like I said, I think I speak on behalf of the aviation in general, especially for the legacy carriers, the ones that they are dealing with marine and offshore business.
So are the airlines adapting the way that they are conversing with the shipping lines and the ship managers because of the importance they place on the seafarers to actually try and make life easier for it? Because as we heard in the last panel, you could be spending 24 hours trying to plan and getting a ticket, then flights get cancelled, and they do, and the poor seafarer then is disappointed and what have you. What can the airlines do to maybe put pressure on those entities that need to have pressure put on them to make the situation better?
To give you an example, let me put it as an example. The latest example on the 28th of February, as you recall, we all wake up in the morning and we realized that we were, the world was under a war situation. So also the crew departments realized that there were people stranded somewhere in the world, Southeast Asia mainly. They used to use the corridor of Gulf region, so through Doha, through Dubai, through whatever, all these very nice places, and they realized that this is gone. So to this extent, we had to do something very quickly to support the demand. The first thing that the airlines had to do is to increase capacity to those destinations that they were in need. So that was the first thing that we had to do. And that is one of the examples that I can give you. And also, just because we mentioned COVID so many times, during COVID, for instance, I proudly have to say that one of our group, KLM, never stopped flying. Okay, so we carry on flying during all the days of COVID. So that was one of the things that we had to prove in action, that we are taking in consideration the needs. And for me, this is what I say always to my team, my teams all around the world. We need to understand these people because, for me, even though I come from aviation, I struggle to convince my people in the headquarters to understand the complexity of the business of a seafarer and the marine community in general. That's the biggest hurdle for me, to make sure that everybody understands what are the difficulties. The more we understand these people, the more we understand their needs, the better we can serve those. So this is a mouse and a cat game that we face internally, but nevertheless, to your question once again, understanding the needs, and the need that we saw lately was the capacity, was one of the things that we needed to make sure that we adapt very quickly to make sure that people, they move around quickly and as safely as possible.
So one of the first questions, which Christos has already answered in the last panel, but I'll direct it over to Henrik and also to Captain Nikos. To Nikos, shipping is agile as never is agility. Henrik, you and I were talking at length during the COVID situation, during the Ukraine, starting the Ukraine war, etc. But what lessons have been learned from that situation as well as now? And also with a bit of an eye and a view with regards to the Ukrainian and the Russian seafarers and the demands from them, because that put in a whole raft of different pressures and aspects for crew managers like yourself to deal with. What are your thoughts?
I'm not sure if we are more prepared now for the war in the Gulf, yeah? But maybe we were not surprised that something else is going to happen. That's maybe the difference. And when you go back in time, I mean, everybody have this terrible stories about seafarers. We had seafarers ending up in COVID times in a detention center for refugees in Gibraltar because they couldn't fly on to London, and their visa expired, and they put them into a detention center with all the Africans coming from the right. So that's and if you move on to the Ukrainian-Russian war, I mean, the Ukrainian crew couldn't sign off in China because one requirement in China is that to get a visa to sign off in China is that you fly to your home country. But they couldn't fly to their home country. So I don't think there's too much to learn about it. But maybe we are in the crewing department, so let's say, as I said, not surprised any longer.
Yeah.
And we understand we have to try to deal with these things. I don't think the world has changed. There's a thing that's not mentioned here also, that small things about the visa things, yeah. So some president in the US decides that all work permits for the US or all visas from the US has to be rechecked, yeah. The people who have to do this is the people in the US consulates around the world, and half of the staff is now sitting checking all visas, and there's no time to issue seafarers visas to here. So that's it, yeah.
Okay, Nikos, your thoughts on and then we'll come on to the visa situation. I'll get Christos's view, but Nikos, your view on lessons learned.
Lessons learned from this latest disruption. I would say two things. To invest more on trust between us and the seafarers. Invest more. And I would say an example about that. And also continuous risk assessment every day when the situation is in evolution, let's say. As an example, the day that the conflict began, 28th of February, we had the second mate repatriated from Japan to Croatia, connection flight in Dubai. So he was stranded there in Dubai airport. I asked the travel agent what the other companies are doing with their seafarers stranded at the airport. And they told me, the travel agent, that all the other companies keep their seafarers at the airport, awaiting the flights to resume their schedules. We did our risk assessment, and we took him to a hotel. 2 hours after this, the Dubai airport was hit by a missile, and the panic was spread. Okay. And then after the following days, we arranged with an agent to move him with a van to Oman, and then after to fly from Muscat with a business
Business class.
flight, they only left, back to his home. I mean, this event was a big investment to the trust through the fleet. I mean, the news was spread to all the fleet that the company is trying the best for us. They're doing their risk assessment and they're trying to get us home the soonest possible. So this has an effect to all the fleet, to all crew members, and that's why I believe that trust, invest in trust, and the continuous risk assessment are.
So do you think that will have a positive effect on recruitment, retention?
The morale of the crew, the retention, of course, I believe it. Because I heard the feedback without asking.
Christos, your views on this? I mean, crew retention, recruitment, very, very important.
Retention of the crew has been heavily damaged through COVID. There were many people that were stayed on shore for long periods, and could be impossible for them to earn their business. You know, seafaring is a profession. When you make your money while on board, you send it home, and then for a short period of time you are on holidays, you are on shore, and you have to return back in order to make money again.
Yeah.
It's a for most of the companies, a short-term contract. Okay, it's a defined 8, 9, 10 months, you name it. So this creates a pattern in the economical cycle of the seafarers, especially on the low of the countries with low economy, okay, where many of the seafarers are originated from. And where they were strained outside waiting for embarkation 12 months, 14 months, 16 months, they were forced to find shore business or to make their own shore business in order to make some living. So retention has been heavily affected during the COVID period. And on top of the way that we behaved, I mentioned that before, I'm not going to mention it again and again. And of course, you understand that these kind of incidents, when you see, because, you know, in this conflict between Iran and USA that we have now, the only innocent is a seafarer.
Yeah.
The seafarer is a profession doing his business, carrying the goods from port A to port B, and he has nothing involved in regards to the mindset there or to the attacks in the engine rooms of container vessels having Iranian flags, or whatever each side decides to do. The profession of the seafarer is not military. Okay, there are seafarers, they work at sea, and they have nothing to do, and they are held hostages as we speak. We have some container vessels under hostage and with a crew there as well in Iranian waters, or we had an Iranian container vessel struck by the USA Navy. This would definitely continue to decrease the number of new applicants. People wanted to join at sea, wanted they're willing to take the profession, and definitely the shortage will get bigger in the years to come. It's not considered anymore as a honorable profession in many countries, as it used to be in the past. And you know, the picture that we have for the seafarers, especially in the modern societies, is that they are very, they have a very difficult role, and they are always left alone to take on the decisions or to take care of themselves.
Henry, let me bring you in on this, because talking a little bit about sort of seafarer numbers and availability and shortages. I mean, the industry talks about shortages of seafarers, of competent seafarers, I think is the correct term there. There are elements of the industry that say there isn't a shortage. Christos has made his points clear there. There are elements that are saying, you know, we need to be encouraging more people into the industry. They've got to see it as an industry that's going to give them a career. They're going to be looked after. They can go home and see their families. They can be repatriated. They can be treated the same way that our shore-based staff expect to be treated as well? What are your thoughts on all of that? It's a bit of a big question. Try and bring in a sort of crew repatriation element as well, because it's not just about seafaring.
First of all, one thing is important to about the crew shortage. It has so far not happened that the ship has not sailed because there was no crew. That's the good thing. Maybe there's always crew departments always find a solution, but maybe it's going to change here. But of course, it does not help the if you look ahead and we try to for the intake of new young talent and people to the industry. Of course, does not help that you can see on the television there's a black smoke coming up of 5 ships outside of Dubai or something like this. I mean, that's clear, and that's and when you think about the whole thing about the Gulf and the COVID, of course, also COVID maybe was not so much. Actually, the good thing maybe is that COVID was not so much exposed in the press about the seafarers, because there were other disasters going on ashore. But I see many times now on BBC, on CNN, it's actually mentioned that there are 20,000 seafarers sitting stocked in the Gulf. So, but that's of course a positive thing that the press is on this. And the other thing is, of course, if you have to select a career, do I want to be stuck there because of things? Yeah, so.
It's a classic situation, Henrik, because 10, 15, 20 years ago, shipping got in the news because there was a pollution and there's an oil seabird. Now it's because a ship has been attacked or it's stuck in the Suez Canal or whatever. Shipping is doing amazing stuff every day, bringing 90% of world trade, and people just take it for granted. That's the sort of story. But your views. Move the microphone closer.
If you go out, okay, here in this, but if you go out in the street in Athens, or nobody knows that actually a seafarer was carrying this suit I have here on the way from China, right? Nobody knows. It's just a thing that's hanging in the shops already. Yeah. So that's what's it called, an invisible industry. Is a problem for recruitment, of course.
Bringing Yanis and Christos in and the rest of the panel, looking at visas. Okay, we've heard a couple of examples there of situations where seafarers will find themselves that they're stranded and what have you. And we had a lot of this sort of issues through COVID, and we had a lot of companies, providers that specialised in knowing how to get visas, knowing how to actually, move that Chinese crew back home or whatever. Let me get your views on this. But there's an airline looking in on this. But what are the challenges? And what can be done? What are the options here? Because Christoph said earlier, we've got to look after these people. We've got to actually treat them with the respect that they deserve. But your views?
I think agreeing not only with Christos, with whomever talked earlier, previous panel, this panel, there is no question about it that we need to do the utmost to support those people. Whenever we talk about seafarers and the hurdles, especially when they have to transit somewhere in the world, in my mind, I have them as, being the refugees of immigration authorities.
Yeah.
Because in so many cases, and especially, again, I need to remind COVID, most probably the crew colleagues here will remember that the regulations were changing on a daily basis, okay? We had changes that we were carrying people from Southeast Asia to Latin America, and by the time the crew or the plane will arrive there, the authorities have already changed the regulation. So to me, that tells a very, very significant story that nobody has touched upon the real situation and the real problem. So we've seen this happening, and we really thought that, I think Christos mentioned it in panel number 1, that, it's easier for any tourist to get a visa to go from A to B that just go for vacation, but it's damn too difficult to get a visa for a professional that needs to go on board or back home. So this is something that we know. We as an airline, to get us into the picture, there is not much that we can do on the regulation side, because the regulations are being formed, are being manned and be dictated by the countries, depending on the bilateral agreements between A country and B country. What we can do is make the life of the seafarer easier when they come at the airport or transit at the airport. However, like I said, the authorities, the immigration authorities are the ones that they're deciding whether you can, get through this airport, A airport, B airport. But that doesn't necessarily change our role on making the life of seafarers easier when they transit. We have to understand what is that they're going through. In so many cases, and I have big examples, we can even accommodate people in the transit area just to make sure before they find a solution or a solution can be found. But one thing that I have to say is that if we ever want to make seafarers' life easier, I think authorities, administrations, associations, they need to understand the importance of the seafarers. And having said that, for them to make regulations to make their life easier when they transit. They just want to transit. They don't want to immigrate in this country. Okay, so this needs, and the authorities, I guess, not only the shipping companies, but also the authorities related to that, IMO, ILO, whatever, they need to push towards that direction. That's my feeling.
Christos, your views, and also, we got the Maritime Labour Convention, we got the IMO, you got the International Chamber of Shipping, who could be forcing through regulatory change of the IMO and the ILO to actually maybe achieve what Yanis is saying we need to achieve. What are your thoughts of all of this?
To my understanding, the basic principle of the Seafarer's book, it was to work as a passport for the seafarers and for people to be able to transit easily. Yes. Yes, Henrik.
I'm just going to say, actually, you mentioned all this convention. There's also a convention about passports.
Yeah.
And the Seaman's book is in the passport convention. And yeah,
All right,
and
didn't
in
know
the
that.
passport convention it says it should give free passage actually.
But, Henrik,
Yes.
what is the reality on
Yeah,
this?
it's a different story. Yeah.
The reality is that the flags took advantage of the Seaman's book requirement, and now, if you join a vessel of a different flag from the national Seaman's book, then another Seaman's book you need to have, because it's $50, it's $100, and that's it. And the story goes on and on and on. I don't want to make Mr. Padazopoulos sad, but I have a few of recommendations that I could drop for you. Not only for KLM, because I have to be honest, I don't have this kind of complaints with KLM, with this group. But I want to mention that the first thing that airlines did when the three big airlines from the Gulf area stopped was not to increase the capacity. They increased the prices. Again, I'm clearly saying not for your group, and I have to say that and mention, okay? But on the other hand, there are ways to make the seafarer's life easier. We have the VIP access, we can have seafarer's access as well.
Yeah.
Or you can have a special passport control, or you can have a special x-ray machine for them. Because, when a seafarer is disembarking, usually, you know what's the drill? They are 5-6 hours in a boat. They are 2-3 hours waiting in immigration in the port. Then usually they are transited to the airport because we don't want to pay hotels, okay? And then they are stuffed in an airplane, flying back for 10-12 hours, with 5-6 hours transit, and then another 5-6 hours to the final destination. So yes, we need to do something. And of course, Mr. Padazopoulos, to make it clear, it's not a specific requirement, okay? It's an industry thing. Just this small parenthesis, Henry, and I'm done speaking today.
Good. Yeah.
Have you ever heard for a pollution in maritime industry? Have you ever heard?
Well,
In case of pollution, how fast the news are traveling? If a small or a big oil spill is somewhere in the globe. So if something bad will go on, we're the first to know. But the good thing, that we are the guys transiting all this stuff around the globe. We are the ones transiting, making China supply the world, and we supply China with first needs. There is no advertisement about that. We are the fact that nobody talks about. But this eventually has to change in order to balance between the two, because accidents will continue to happen, things will continue to go wrong, but at some point we need to give the respect to the people that they bring the things in our table and they do a very hard job trying to do that successfully.
Nikos, what's your views on? Yeah, let's respond.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Christos, just to say thank you for the segregation, because to make it clear, I'm not here to defend aviation for sure. That was my role. That was right. But also, I don't want to carry through a sales message for France KLM. That's also not my purpose for being here. I totally agree with you. There is more to be done. Always there is more to be done. And again, like I said in the beginning, there are carriers, legacy carriers, that they focus and they try to give more. They try to be more lenient. They try to be more flexible when it comes to those kind of situations. But one carrier or a few carriers cannot change the world. We can be an example for the rest of the carriers. We can be the example for the industry to change. But I totally agree. We need to go hand by hand, industries together to make things change. I just wanted to make this clear, and thank you for the comments.
Have you got a comment, Henrik?
Can I ask the airlines one question?
Of course you can. As long as you move your microphone closer to your mouth.
Because
That'd be
it's
good.
on the agenda, it's called resilience, yeah? So when we now move ahead this summer or whatever, and there becomes a shortage of jet fuel, and you're cancelling every second flight because you don't have the fuel, yeah? Would you give preferences to the seafarers?
First of all, again, going back to what I just said, I'm not here to defend aviation. And talking about my group, we haven't canceled our flights yet. So still...
No, if it comes to that theoretical situation, yeah?
Thank God we are... the majority of the European carriers, us involved, we have done hedging. For those of you that don't know what hedging is, that we book and we block a price and an amount of fuels well ahead in time. So this is where we are today. The problem in Europe is not getting the fuel per se, especially jet fuel. It's called A-1 prime fuel. It needs a very special refinery before it gets into the plane. So it's not the crude oil that other engines are using. So the problem today with European carriers mainly is the refinery being available to bring this A1 jet fuel on board. So to your question, as we speak today, we are resilient enough. So, and again, talking about our group, not having any kind of sales message into that, we haven't canceled flights yet. And I can only say yet because nobody can promise about the future. We don't know what will happen. If the situation stays as is, again, European carriers, we can find a way to get fuels in from other regions as well. But this is what is happening today. I cannot say anything about the future because most probably you don't expect me to tell you that we live in a crazy world, that most probably if we wake up tomorrow morning and we find that there is another conflict somewhere that will cause another strait of whatever to close and then we are done with whatever. So my positive message is that yes, we still have the capacity and we will stick on having that as long as the situation remains the same and our focus still remains with mariners.
Okay, can I just ask any questions from the audience? I'm doing all the questioning here. Anybody have any thoughts they want to share with the panelists? We've got one more question that I want to... Time as normal marches on. Any questions at all from anybody? Okay, just going through and start with Nikos. The panel's called Building Resilience. How do we build resilience into all of this so we don't find ourselves in this situation again? What's your thoughts?
Well, for resilience, of course, we have to, again, I will say to this, we have to invest in our trust with seafarers. We have also to do always our risk assessment. And of course, we have to have contingency programs in order to not have a shortage of crew, and have competent seafarers on board our vessels. With the appropriate training, and having also the exams between the fleet, showing, let's say, a master coming from a cadet all this year, a career path shown to all the cadets. So I believe that this three is part of a resilience for the shipping industry as a whole. And also I believe that a lot of problems that we're facing are not going to be solved by international, let's say, organizations like IMO, etc. But most of the flag states, China, USA, these countries lately have some obstacles, new obstacles for the crew changes. They are changing formalities. One terminal has other formalities from other terminal in the same country. So if these countries, let's say, are more convenient to crew changes, a lot of problem will be solved. That's from my end.
Thank you very much. Henrik, your views on building resilience for...
I think I fully agree with you that we have to build from cadets and crew pools like you and me. Most probably was also from cadet to captain in the same company. Yeah? So we have that again in the future. Unfortunately, our industry is so that maybe 20% is doing like this, and the other 80% is stealing from this. But for the situation right now away here, I think for the months to come, if the situation comes and there's not enough yet A1 plus fuel, then we have to, the resilience will be that we have to expect that crew changes are going to cost a lot more. Yeah? So, and be ready to pay it for the seafarers. Yeah. You can take an example, that if your manning director is traveling, sometimes seafarers are postponed a few days because it's cheaper to find the ticket or whatever, right? But if your manning director is traveling on a business trip and the secretary called him and say, we found the ticket $200 cheaper, you have to go home 2 days later. You think he will accept this or what? Yeah, that's yes, exactly. So, yeah.
Yannis, your views?
I've been working all these years in an industry like aviation that for us it was all about contingency plans. Us being taking care about the safety and security of people, which is paramount. So it was the contingency A, contingency B, contingency C, and all of a sudden COVID came and we realized that we didn't have a plan. Okay, so this is where we face reality and we said, okay, what is the plan now? No plan. The reason I'm saying that is that was a very good lesson taken, not only for us, but us as an industry. My idea is what we're doing today and what we do, not in a panel occasion, but we can talk. We need to talk. Like I said in the beginning, we need to understand the needs. The more we talk about the prime industries that is our concern, the more we understand. And then if we do our risk assessments based on what are the real needs, then we will be more ready to interact when time really wants us to do so. So the reason I'm saying that is we cannot unilaterally just say, I know what I will do. No, you don't. You need to ask your customer also what is that will happen. So we need to interact, we need to talk to each other, and then we need to build our contingency plans, because by the end of the day, those plans, they meet.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my message, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Christos, last word to you.
I think Captain Nikos said it very well in the beginning. I'm just going to try to expand it a bit further. We need to build relationships of trust. First of all, with our seafarers, and then we are with our third party that they are offering the services to us. And this is the only way to be resilient and to get ready for the future. Because if you create this kind of climate, this kind of behavior, this kind of common understanding that each party is trying its best for the owning company to the seafarers, in order to serve and to be able to send them on board safely, etc., then we will have people that they like to return back to our vessels, back to our companies. They will be resilient, the retention will increase, and everybody will perform better. Same applies with the third-party companies that you work together. If the relationship with your supplier, with your provider is healthy, and there is a common understanding that we try to do our best for both parties, simple as that, things will get better.
Thank you very much. Could I ask the audience just a big round of applause for our panelists today, please?